Hello, friends and fam. It is MG, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Reimagined You Lab podcast, where you know that we are always coming in hot. We always have an amazing guest, and today is no exception. As a matter of fact, we've got somebody exceptional in the lab, and I cannot wait until we get into it. But before we do, I want to thank you for always tuning in and making the Reimagine You Lab podcast one of the hottest shows that are on the sound waves. I appreciate you for joining in. And don't forget, if this is the first time that you are listening in, hit that notification bell so that each Friday when a new episode drops, you get the notification. I don't want you to miss it. You, your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. I want everybody to make sure that they get a taste because there is always something amazing that happens when you come into the lab. Now, with that, all of our housekeeping is out of the way. And as I've already told you, we've got an exceptional guest that is in the building. Natalia, I want to say hello, my dear. How are you?
I am well. You weren't kidding. You have amazing energy. Before I got on here, I was telling her how much I was feeling my nerves as far as I could run like a mile. And the moment she started talking, I just took her in and I settled in my body. So thank you for being you and for creating this space. I look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, welcome. I am so glad that you are here. And as I shared before we came on, you know, and all of my listeners know that I do a thing that I call Beyond the Bio. And that's where I kick it over to you. And I say, Natalia, tell them who you are, where you at, what you do, and how you do it. It's your turn, my dear.
What's so funny about that is I was literally just working on my Instagram bio prior to coming on here. And
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. You type out things you have to erase because you have too many characters, and then you're like, but that doesn't make sense. I need to reword that. So I just spent so much time being very intentional about the bio. So to be asked the question of who I am beyond it, I love the idea of believing that I am everything yet nothing at all. So that means that I have the opportunity to meet each moment according to what feels most aligned to me in that moment. And if it happens to be something that I have not shown before, it's an opportunity to view myself in a new lens. And I think that a part of the nerves when it came to this podcast is, in a way, I knew with the name alone, also in engaging with you, I knew that it would be an opportunity to meet myself in a new way. So what I will say to answer that question, who am I beyond the bio? Everyone or in nothing at all. But also, I'm excited to meet who I am within the next 30 minutes. So,
yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, and you are in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, all of those things. Yes. So by trade, let's talk about the concrete things, right? Because now that's actually going back to the bio. So by trade, my name is Natalia Barlow, and I am an image curator. I have the privilege and the honor of supporting women leaders as they navigate life's transitions by discovering, accepting, and expressing more of who they are, their truest, most authentic self. And it's a privilege and an honor because, as you can imagine, we go through that cycle of life quite often, quite regularly. And to have someone guide you who is not judgmental, who has been there and back, who continues to go through that cycle and has created a framework to make you feel like you can actually enjoy the ride. It's a privilege that I've created it. It's an honor to serve. And I am located in sunshiny at times, Tampa, Florida.
Yes, sunshiny at times, for real, because it was tropical storm here all week, all last week. I was like, what is happening? Yeah. Oh my goodness. But you know what, Natalia, I love that because image curator, and I think a lot of times when you're talking about discovering and who you are and being authentic in who that is. And, even when you're saying, being you yourself, everything and nothing at all, all of us are that from time to time. You know what I mean? Just depending on the situation, right? So tell us a little bit about how did you get here? How did you get there? How did this discovery for Natalia come? How did you become an image curator?
So, as a professional makeup artist for 13 years, that
Mhm.
journey started in 2011, right?
Okay.
And it's interesting because an image curator is the title that I gave myself. Pretty
Hmm.
much every other title I've had has been given to me. So I became a makeup artist because I was a YouTube enthusiast and someone saw me and was like, I'm getting married. Can you do my makeup? And I'm like, I can get paid. Okay, sure. Let's go on that journey and paint faces. And it was a side hustle that became a main hustle. But it was around 2018 where my personal journey
Hmm.
became revealed to me of like, oh, I don't know myself. Like this
Mm.
person who I'm showing up as, I'm feeling this dissonance of like I'm presenting something. But
Yeah.
at home, in my personal life, I'm totally different. And I felt it, but
Hmm.
I didn't give it words. I wasn't able to communicate it. It was just this inner turmoil where I was realizing I'd say one thing, although I felt something completely different. But whatever I
Hmm.
was saying was in an effort to protect myself in a way. That runs deep. We can explore that later, but we're going to stay on track with the original question. And I had a client one day who said to me, do you realize that your website and your inner, like your experience, because at the time I had a studio in my home. So she saw me publicly, but also in my home. And she was like, do you realize there's like a difference there? Online, you're black, white, and red, but in your home, it's gray and blush pink. Like, what's up with this? Like, there's this boldness, but then there's this softness. Like, do you realize that? And when she said it, I was like, oh my gosh. Because during that time, I felt like for a season of time, I
Hmm.
had been experiencing the idea of there was this shell that I felt was making me feel so cramped. And I was
Uh-huh.
ready to have more space and to break free from it. And it ended up being the fact that I was presenting something that wasn't true. So that started this journey of me going on a deep dive into myself. And within that deep dive, I started to test out things to see if they work for me, to see if they help me harmonize all of the parts of me, because that was
Hmm.
hard. You start to discover some things that you're just like, that aspect of me, if someone knew about it, they would judge me or they would villainize me or they would see it in such a negative light. But I don't see it as negative. I see it as it exists because this exists. I'm seeing that. So how can I become the gel that makes it all make sense? And as I
Yeah.
was discovering what those tools were, I would have people, especially after COVID, where everyone is starting to realize I need to learn a little bit more about myself. I started
Hmm.
to have more of these kind of under the surface conversations with people that was also like a way for me to, oh, I have new information. I can take back and keep digging within what I'm doing. And over
Yeah.
time, it just started to build this thing that once I started going through more cycles, I was like, well, that worked this time. How can I expand it? Treating myself as my own test dummy. Well, not a dummy, but you know what I mean? My own guinea
Yeah.
pig.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Treating myself as my own guinea pig, and then realizing that this thing I've built is such a gift that I've been able to give myself. And when I've shared bits and pieces of it with people, it's been so helpful. It's been so healing.
Hmm.
And I feel like now the way that I've been showing up professionally now feels like a shell. And it's time for me to step into what this new role is. And that's how I
Hmm.
became an image curator.
That is beautiful. I love that,
Thank you.
Natalia, because we just gotta step into that for a second. If you don't mind me just leaning in, because I think
Let's do it.
as women, and I'm sure it's probably the same way for men, like they deal with their ego thing, and how delicate that can be. But I think for women, especially when you have there's been such hot topic on imposter syndrome, right? And you get into, and you're one with communication and language and narrative and words, right? But there's so much of that that there is this dichotomy within ourselves, like I have to present this, because of things like, we're emotional. We are, that we have to show up this way in a workplace because, I want to be strong. I want to be bold. I need to be seen in a certain way. And, but at home, I need to be this or that, and I need to come off, a little softer for my husband, for my children, and so it's almost like in order to exist as a woman, you had to create these variations of who you were. And so to hear you say, hey, someone asked the question, hey, there's two sides of you that I see. Is it okay? And it's almost like, being able to be one person, authentic, no matter where you show up. That's like a paradigm shift. So I am sure that in the clients that you work with, girl, you probably have made people, like the mind blown emoji, I'm sure is going off for people. I'm sure people listening right now are like, wait a minute, hold on, you saying something, you're speaking my language. Is that the effect that I'm sure that you have on people? I'm asking, even though I feel like I'm answering my own question, but is that how people are, the clients that you work with? What has been your impact, this evolution that you've kind of gone through, and when you share it with clients and other people, what has been the experience for them?
Two things that I want to say to that. So there's not two, there's four. When it
Okay.
comes to the way to balance out yourself, I call them your four dominant modes. And I
Okay.
also believe that you don't have to be these four modes. I believe that these four modes exist within all of us, but they exist because they have to. It's like they balance
Okay.
each other out. It's a beautiful dance. It's a fluid dance if you
Okay.
allow it to be. But you have to first uncover them and then
Okay.
realize which relationships, which environments, which ways that you engage with yourself nurture or create chaos within these
Okay.
different modes. That's one of the things. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that
I
for
love
sure,
that.
when it comes to clients, I didn't have to, it was an opportunity for me. Consistently, with each time I took someone through the process, I refined it because I realized that depending on where a person starts in their ability to navigate themselves, they may need different wording. They may need it to be principled or to be more practical and not too woo woo or too spiritual. They need some, for
Yeah.
some of us, we need to connect it to a way that we have already thought, whether it is our foundation in religion. Like I had to understand, one, who is this person coming into the door? What is the current language that they have? And
Mhm.
how can I marry their language with mine? And when I
Okay.
find that perfect marriage, that's when it's like, hold on one minute, I need to digest this. Like that's how they
Yeah.
respond. We have silence in the room when I'll say something or I'll share a principle, and it's just like, because it makes things make sense. And I think that
Mhm.
that's the beautiful gift of clarity, realizing
Mhm.
that you're not crazy. You know all the things that you've been thinking, you just didn't have the words, you didn't have the language. So to be able to provide that, and then to see the impact of people being able to now not just use the words, but also use the tools of the perspectives and the philosophy shared within their lives. I see it as I embody a drop of water, and as I land in the body of water, which is everyone else, I create a ripple effect. But as my clients come in and they embody their drop of water, they're able to create their ripple effects. So I
Mhm.
just see it as ripple effects that continue to make the ripple effects turn into a small wave. The small wave will turn into a tsunami at some point, and then eventually we all get wet. Like it's just like a way to continuously like expand the idea that loving yourself radically, allowing yourself to discover, like, let's go digging, let's look at some things,
Yeah.
let's accept all that is there, and then express from that place. That's the
Mhm.
confidence that you need when you say that you feel like an imposter. And you only
Yeah.
feel like an imposter because all of the parts of you aren't integrated. You're showing
Yeah.
up the way because it exists. But
Mhm.
the other ways that you aren't showing, it's there is the dissonance, there's the disconnect. You need to allow all of them to exist and nurture all of them equally. So as they show up, it's you and you accept it.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Accepting all that's there. Because
All of it.
I think that's the part that's challenging sometimes
Very
for
much
people,
so.
because you kind of get feedback that that you are not supposed to accept it, or it shouldn't be there, or you get you know um chastised, or certain things about you get scrutinized, and so you try to either press it down, or suppress it in certain ways, and but like you're saying, I love the language that you're using around it, because I think you're right, it does exist, and it may exist for different reasons, whether it was hey, this is the experience that you had and the way that you were raised. Some of it may have come from a traumatic place. Some of it may just been, in the environment that you grew up in, or what have you. But all of it does exist, and it does have to be nurtured. And so, no, I love that. I love that. Good. This is good. So tell me this.
Mhm.
When I think about, tell me a pivotal moment in your life or career that changed your perspective, because I think perspectives change, and when you start, especially when you're talking about there these types of things, these moments in your life, what was that moment for you?
I've had a couple,
Okay.
right? But the one that I think would be most helpful to this conversation to understand how I
Mhm.
can give myself the kind of radical permission that I was able to give myself was that I experienced something called an ego death. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not. You'll have to explain.
So I didn't know what it was. It wasn't something that I was seeking out. It was just a part of the experience. I
Mhm.
Have you ever seen Game of Thrones?
I have.
You know Arya, the daughter who got lost and went on her own journey. She was on that journey to become no one. Do you remember that?
I do.
So the ego death is the idea of becoming no one. You dead the ego. The ego no longer exists,
Okay.
and you kill off the ego. And I'm using these words because they sound visceral, and it essentially is that. I don't think that
Mhm.
everyone is designed within this lifetime to possibly experience that, because there's a reintegration period that can be extensive, right? But going experiencing that, going on that journey of knowing that, like, I don't know why, but I feel like her journey and my journey is quite similar. I like the idea of not being any of these things that I'm attached to, any of these hats. Like it starts off very superficial. Like, I don't want to be identified as a makeup artist. I don't want to be identified as an
Mhm.
esthetician. I don't want to be identified as that. Then it starts to go deeper of like, I don't want to be identified as a daughter. I don't want to be, because there's trauma there, right? The
Mhm.
association of being a daughter to a father who wasn't a part of my life for 10 years,
Mhm.
wearing that hat and having resentment towards that hat. I'm like, well, I don't want to be a daughter. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. And then it went even deeper to me being like, well, do I want to be Natalia? And realizing that a part of my journey, like me starting as a professional makeup artist, I started with the name of Tisha. She's a part of my middle name. My middle name is Retisha. I
Mhm.
started using that online because when I existed as Natalia, this soft, gentle, lively, open, loving person,
Mhm.
really existing in this vulnerability of being open in that way. People didn't know how to treat me well. And a result of me showing up and being mistreated and being talked about negatively, where people were making up lies, that brought out my warrior side. And
Okay.
that warrior was Tisha. And I was like, well, I know I don't want to be her anymore because she's ruining my life effectively. Like, she's so fiery. I don't have great relationships, because of her. She will burn this thing down. She's a crash out queen, right? Like, that was Tisha
Okay.
energy. But then I was like, I know I don't want to be her, but do I want to be Natalia? Because then I also was like, if this is bad, Tisha,
Mhm.
then the opposing has to be bad. So I wanted both of them gone. And
Okay.
by
And each of
pushing
them were an extreme.
hmm,
It sounded
yes,
like each of them were an extreme. Okay.
but they had to coexist because they were the balance to each other. They were polar opposites. So I
Mm-hmm.
would do this dance of being this or that. I didn't know how to flow between the two. That's what happens after the fact, right? When you go on a journey and start loving yourself more. But I was existing as these two things, yo-yoing back and forth. And I was just like, that is draining. That's exhausting. Both of you just like go away. And what ended up happening was like I cut my hair off. If you go to look back at any of my previous pictures over the last couple of years, I've been bald for a couple of cycles. That was a part of that. Whenever I don't have hair, I also don't have an ego. And I have a name now. Like I don't feel like I need to detach from Natalia anymore because I've built her up with an understanding of who I was before I came into this body. So she's safe
Okay.
now, right? But the
Okay.
idea of anything else that I've attached to her, all of that can go at any moment, right? But the
Okay.
ego death itself, the going through that process of shedding, and shedding, like it was a death cycle of sorts. Going through that process and then allowing myself to meet a version of me that had not existed until I was able to get rid of the other two.
Okay.
That
Okay.
added perspective. That
Yeah.
added perspective that I don't think I would have had I not experienced that.
Yeah. You know what? That's interesting. And I admire the ability to do that because to some degree everybody, or I can't say everybody, I would think everybody has a level of ego that is hard for them to kill. Like that, like there's an attachment to the self that people either are protecting or they are holding on to for whatever reasons. And so that's an admirable thing to do. How long was that type of a process for you? Was that how was that years? Was that you know how long was
Yeah,
that?
it was years. So it happened in parts too. That's why I
Mhm.
created a digital document that we can talk about at a later time in this conversation,
Yeah.
or not at all. But this document took
Hmm.
5 years because it culminates the full process and the obstacles I faced within it, the
Hmm.
conversations I've had during that time of building this thing out to create this framework of understanding. But the
Hmm.
process itself for me was very segmented. It started in 2018 when the client told me, "Do you know you're showing up in this way, but existing in this other?" At that time, I rejected Tisha. So now Natalia, who has not been shown up publicly, she has not been out here for 8 years, guys. She was hidden because she was not safe. But now this unsafe version of myself that I haven't nurtured, it showed up again. And all of the things that happened 8 years prior started happening again, of me being taken advantage of and all of those things. So then I have, let's say, 2018 until 2019, I started to go into business for myself, meaning having my own entity, getting my own studio, all of those things. But the
Hmm.
fiery version of myself is gone. I'm now existing as this version that I don't know because I have not nurtured. And I'm going into business for myself where I can't even focus on myself because the world is moving. And then that first year also included COVID, where my first year in business of having my own studio, I'm also
Hmm.
experiencing the fact that I can't work. But the
Right.
beauty of that was when the world shut down, no one needed me.
Yeah.
And because no one needed me, I now had time to figure this thing out. And in 2020, that's when the ego death happened. So it was a good year and a half of me being aware that I need to figure some things out and start this process of, I call myself a curator because what a curator does is they go out and they find things and they bring them
Things
together to
don't.
build something. So I
Mhm.
had a year and a half to go
Mhm.
out and grab all of these different ways to start viewing what I'm experiencing, so that when I
Mhm.
had the opportunity of COVID, I know it was a bad time for a lot of people, but it was the best time for me because
Mhm.
now I get to sit with this information. And I also sat with a book called The Seat of the Soul by Eckhart Tolle. And
Mhm. Mhm.
that helped me fall apart and come back together
Yeah.
again. And the third version of me, I'll say, yeah, I'll call it a version, I can call it a mode, you can call it so many different things. But the third way that I showed up, I got introduced to her through that process. And I lived out that mode for 2 years.
Mhm.
Where the
Mhm.
other two aren't here, I'm the third for two
Okay.
years.
Okay.
And by 2023, I realized it's time for me to transition where I have to start integrating everything again. And 2023 was the year that I say that nothing moved. And it was
Mhm.
because I needed to sit still. But like the world is back up and running. Everyone else, like I had people in my life who were getting married and having babies, and you see all of these transitionings happening around you. But
Yeah.
me, I am on, if you were to imagine it being a bridge, I'm in the middle, because now these two polar opposite, there is a bridge that's been built for them, but now I'm at
Mhm.
the top and I'm just
Yeah.
sitting there watching everything around me move. And that's when the fourth mode came into play, of the decision that a fourth mode was necessary, because the fourth mode was the fact that I gave myself permission to at any time mix up the pot as needed be of these three modes and show up authentically.
Yeah.
So that was like a 5-year span.
Yeah. That, well, you know what? But you did it. Because a lot of times it's doing the work, and sometimes it's hard to do that. Now it sounds like you were able to do this process kind of like this was a solo process for you.
For
No
sure.
therapist, no coaching. Okay, so you just kind of did, this was a solo process, you know, and to get introspective with you and to really be honest with you, that's real. That is a real thing, because most of the time we can't be honest with ourselves, or people are challenged by it. It's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. I tell
I think
clients that all the time. That's an important thing to do.
I think it's necessary. And
It
I don't,
is.
and the reason why I made the shift from being a makeup artist to an image curator was because
Mhm.
one, I outgrew the shell, but two, I realized time is the luxury that so many people are limited on. And
Mhm.
if I can take my 5 years and build something and refine it and refine it and refine it and refine it, so that now we can go through a month-long process, possibly take
Yeah.
5 years and support you, and it being like just a couple of weeks, depending on whatever, however, which way you self-pace, or if you go on a journey with me, I think that that in and of itself is also a gift.
Yeah. It is. It is. That's instrumental. That's instrumental in making profound impact, you know, and in a shortened period of time, because you had that extended period of time, you know how to now create an experience for someone else in a matter of time that's not nearly as extensive, but just as impactful. And that's huge.
And thank you. And it also, it doesn't, I was going to say, and I corrected myself very quickly, but I was going to say that it helps people avoid the obstacles that I had to face. But I think that some of the obstacles are necessary as well, because that's what strengthens you. That's what creates the character. That's what helps you
Mhm.
really frame out the perspective that I give you, because I'm not giving you something as if like, okay, this is what I had, this is what you have, and now this is going to be a copy and paste situation. It is not.
Right.
My life is not
Mhm.
your life. A lot of the women who come my way are wives with children. I am neither married nor do I have children. So the ability to take what I give to you as an opportunity to view things differently, approach
Mhm.
things differently, and allow yourself to go at your own pace. But there's a safety in knowing that there's a framework to follow.
Right.
That's the gift.
That's the difference. Yeah. No, I like that. So tell me this, when you are thinking about, what would you say are the greatest rewards, or what would you say is the most rewarding aspects of what it is that you do and how you help clients? Most rewarding. Because a lot of
Improve
times people
communication.
people don't think that they need, sometimes people don't realize that this is something that they might need.
Improved communication, improved relationships. I call it the perks of alignment, and
Mhm.
each letter stands for something, right? So clarity of purpose, a clear understanding of energy. Energy is your unique balance of masculine and feminine, your choice. My Tisha and Natalia is my masculine and my feminine. That's why it was so hard. That's why that battle, it was a battle versus a dance. They were existing as opposites versus balancing each other out in the way that is best for them to balance each other out, right? So a clear understanding of what your balance of energy is, an understanding of your your relationships. Relationships, if you were to think about this tree, this is the best way for me to explain it. So the perks of alignment, your purpose and your energy is your root system. Okay. Your purpose is your what, it's your function, but that's also a choice that you make of the next step forward. It doesn't have to be as deep as the who am I existential crisis. Don't go that deep. What is your function of your next step forward and your intention? That is your purpose. When it comes to your energy, what is your desired balance of masculine and feminine? Because everything from that point up is built from purpose and energy. Okay. Your relationships are the trunk of the tree. The trunk of the tree is what supports the expression, which is the fruit of the tree, the limbs and the leaves, but it's also what is the bridge between the purpose and energy and the expression. The C and the S is communication and style. That's the part that, that everyone gets to experience. Everyone knows an apple tree by the fact that it has apples. So the communication and style is the big expression of the tree. But how you are supported in your relationships and going through a process with me or through the document that I've created, where you know how to compartmentalize your relationships based off of need, how to make sure that you can ensure that there are parameters or these imaginary lines that people must show you who they are before they can keep coming into your garden in the different segments of the garden. The relationships are important in that way, but understanding that all of this is now aligned here, because the biggest issue, especially for the people who are like, I don't need this kind of experience, their expression is not aligned here.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's deep.
They don't even know what's happening down here. All they know is the way that they are shaped by their environment. You said that we had a tropical storm in Tampa recently. The tree itself, the root system only gets messed up when it's really just like the roots have rotted in some kind of way, but roots run deep and they run wide. So often if the tree will fall over, the roots are still there though. Right. So the tree itself that is impacted by the environment is often what people know. Their expression is often shaped by what happens here in their relationships. And that's what leads to inauthenticity, the unawareness of what's here.
What's there. Oh, I like that. So you know what? So talk a little bit about this document that you have created, this guide, right? It's the guide. So talk about it, and then we're going to tell people where they can go so that they can get it. How about that?
I love the finger of like, tell them about the thing, girl. Put it out there. So the document is called The Original Guide to Authentic Expression. I, as an original, have created something that I believe will help you deconstruct the false expression that you have been showing up and become aware of your relationships. But first, start here in understanding what's true about you and build up. It'll help you do that process. And it's segmented into 5 parts. It's so interesting that I keep saying the word segmented, because my experience was segmented, and maybe subconsciously I just knew that you have to take things in part. Like you can't just take a pie and just like bite into the pie. You got to slice it up, right? So it's broken into 5 parts. The first part is for you to inspect your weeds, right? The idea of the document is that you are now entering into this garden of your authentic expression. Oftentimes, especially as women, we are nurturing everyone else's garden and not our own. So this is an invitation for you to refocus your energy back to you and start there. So the first method to tend your garden is to inspect for weeds. Okay. Weeds are these false expressions that are just tearing up the yard, taking up all of the space of all the beautiful things you want to put there. The weeds are taking their place. So you need to go in, and there's a process of a couple of different questions where you're going to uproot these different weeds in these different areas of your life to really understand, well, how is my expression being so false in the first place? More than likely, you have so many weeds, you thought your weeds were you. You got to get rid of those. Ooh, right?
Girl.
Yeah.
They thought these were you. Listen, that's good stuff. So we okay. Now you ain't gonna be able to tell them everything, but you tell them. So keep on give them those 5 things so that they can make sure that they go and get this guide, because they need it.
So the 5 parts, so I won't go into too much detail, but I think that it doesn't matter how much detail I go into, because It's created for you to follow a process and you have to walk it, right?
Yeah.
I'm walking you through the garden, showing you the ways to tend it, right? That's what the document is all about. But the first method is to inspect the weeds. The second method is to build your toolkit. Your toolkit are the philosophies and the perspectives that you need to really understand what is your garden and what is not.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big part of it. The
Yeah.
third method, I just want to tell you, I want to tell you all the things. The third method is the art of self-care. You
Mm.
have to learn how to create more space for you to exist. And you do that by showing yourself that your values, your desires, your wants, your needs, they are worthy of having and worthy of nurturing. And you do that through self-care. So that's the third method. The fourth method is the proprietary framework that lands the whole thing, which are the perks of alignment. I walk you through how to build these 5 containers in your garden: purpose, energy, relationships, communication, and style. How to build them out to understand that these are now the cement blocks of understanding of how you move forward. And then the fifth thing is like the bow on it, which is how to hold yourself accountable to what you've discovered. So that's the discovery, the acceptance, and the expression of more of you. And it is called The Original's Guide to Authentic Expression.
The Originals Guide. I love the way that even sounds, Natalia. Now, you guys can go to nataliabarlow.com, and all of her info is in the show notes, so you guys can make sure that you go and check her out. Make sure that you get the guide. Like, listen, if you are having, don't even let me say that. Go and check her out, because you may not know if you're having in image issues, because sometimes I think we might not identify that there are some challenges we may be facing with who we are, our identity, and things like that. Go and check out nataliabarlow.com. Glow by Natalia. This is the amazing young lady. I'm just upset because we're coming short on time. That's why I'm like, Natalia, tell them what's in that. Give them the 5 pieces of it so that we can make sure that we get that in, and we give them all of your details, because it's just so much, and you've been so impactful. I love what it is that you do. I love the way in which you are helping people. I'm glad that we had a chance to have a conversation so that I could learn more. I just think that you're going to help a lot of amazing women in amongst the ones that you're already helping. Now, before I let you get out of the lab, because I can't let you go before, give us three pieces of advice that you would give to change makers. 3 pieces, 3 things you would tell them before we let you go.
Thing number 1, embody your drop. If you want to create a ripple effect, you got to make that drop of water matter. So embody the drop. Number 2, when you said earlier about if you don't know if you have image issues, whatever you call it, a person is aware of if you're showing up and you're feeling something different. You're aware of that. Everyone knows how it feels in the body to show up one way but exist in a different way. You are also aware of your inner dialogue and the conversation that you have with yourself, as well as the story you're telling yourself. You're well aware. You're well aware. But the document helps you become more aware. And the third thing is that change is inevitable. So whether or not you make the choice to do it, it's already in motion. So as far as that journey being as of ease and enjoyable as possible is whether or not you're willing to accept that it's happening. So allow it to be.
Allow it to be. I love it. Natalia Barlow, girl, you know you the bomb.com. That's probably an old expression, but I'm telling you, this has been good. Good stuff. You guys go and check out nataliabarlow.com. Glow by Natalia. She is an amazing image curator. I want you guys to get familiar with her, get familiar with her work, do some work on the inside for you. I am so glad that you had a chance to come into the lab. I thank you, my sister, for being here. I'm gonna have to have you come back. You know you're gonna have to come back.
Thank you for having me. I will come back. I'll do a part 2 for sure. We need to do some of the work together. Like we didn't get a chance to actually do the things in the lab, But that's the processes are segmented for a reason. First you got to dismantle, or first you got to go out and discover. So we did a lot of discovery today, and maybe next time we'll do a lot of acceptance.
Absolutely. Let's definitely do it. As a matter of fact, we talked about bringing you it back for one of the anniversary shows. So we'll definitely do that. And so we're just going to plan for that. All right. We'll just have to schedule it. So, all right. So you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Reimagined You Lab podcast. This is MG. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you can get the notifications for every new episode. And I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of the show with us. I appreciate you. Love you guys to life. And I look forward to seeing you here the next time. Until then, see you later. Mwah.
Bye.